Uh, so we are on page Chavov. And we actually a few lines down. Four lines down. And the overall discussion is how it is that even at the essential level, there are madrigas. Initially, we pointed to Keser and Chochmah, Atik and Chochmah, Pnimi is Abba, Pnimi is Atik. And yet, we're saying that even though Pnimi is Abba, Pnimi is Atik, yet we're saying that it's not exactly the same. The way it comes out in Chochmah is not the same as it is in Atik, which is Oyneg. Oyneg is the initial heart of Chochmah, so to speak, the life element of Chochmah. And here, we have another dogma, we have another model that represents this principle. That is on the union of Das. As it says, that we're saying that Das is Pnimiyus HaKeser. And as it says in Eitz Chaim, that when you count the spheres, you can count the spheres starting from the Keser. Keser, Chochmah, Bina, and then the Midas. In that case, you will skip the Das. And if you are want to count the Das, then you have to start from Chochmah. You can't start from Keser, because Das and Keser are essentially the same thing, interchangeable. And you can't count them both, because if you count the Keser and then Das, it's redundant. And yesterday we started discussing the principle of Das. In essence, even though the order of spheres is Chochmah, Bina, V'das, the essential strength, presence of Das is actually based on Keser, and that which is higher than Chochmah. We explained, we started talking about it yesterday. That Das really is an elusive concept, even though we are constantly referring to it. We're saying Das is called, Das means knowledge. Now, even at the lowest level, when you say the word das is knowledge, there's the chitzonius of this das, of this knowledge, which is like memory. I learned something, and therefore I committed it to memory, and I know it. Well, this is not what we mean when we say, I know it. Something that you commit to memory, and as a result of that you know, that das, that knowledge, is retrieved like you look up into an encyclopedia. It's retrieved when a question comes up and you have to use that knowledge, you retrieve it from memory. This is not das that describes the state of mind of a person. Das, what does this person know, means what is the basis of his orientation in the world, in life. I mentioned to you a while ago, I remember that we had a guest at one time, very long time ago. It was a Paltiel Bacher, a man. He spent a lot of time by us. He, along with a twin brother, were born retarded.
What?
Retarded. And then through a very big effort, they had developed certain skills. And they were quite well knowledgeable, quote unquote. He was a mathematician, and he was in a PhD program of mathematics. He can carry a very clear and logical discussion. But in fact, he lacked das. He was not really a full-fledged individual. He would sit by the table in the middle of a Friday night meal, whatever, sit by the table, and he would doze off. He wasn't an elderly person who would just fall asleep out of time. Then we begin to talk, and he said, so I would say to him, are you so tired? He said, no, there's nothing going on. Nothing going on. So you go to sleep. About das, a person who knows, who has a das in life, and in his presence in the world, and the world he presses. It's never nothing going on. The reality is always going on, and there's always a participator. This is the principle we always say. You can teach a skill, but you cannot teach reality. This is what we're saying over here. Das, knowledge. As I said, even the word knowledge on its most practical and superficial influence, it means then I learned something and I committed it not to memory, I committed it to my conscience, I committed myself to this. I recognize that this is the truth with which I'm going to live. And therefore, my world view is affected by this knowledge. And because of this knowledge, I approach everything with that view, with that color. So this is even knowledge, so to speak, on the lowest level. Like, for example, you enter somebody's home. So you know that you are in somebody's home. You're not in your own home. You're not in the street. You're in somebody's home. That awareness that you're in somebody's home is constant. You are not going to move furniture around to change the setup or move the clock from where it is to a different place. Not because you have to remind yourself, hey, I have no right to do this. This is not my home. But because your basic orientation doesn't allow you to even to think about it, even to consider it. Because there's a certain recognition as to where you are and what's going on. This is das. It's not information that you have to retrieve. This is something that is real. This type of knowledge, this type of reality that is really, as I said, in our conscience, has a very profound root. And the root of this das, I said there is, the root of das in general is Kesser. Kesser is even above the Chokhmah. Kesser is that I'll put in some words and then maybe we'll elaborate on it. Kesser is that sense of reality that is beyond being identified. If we would take the model, I said just now, you would be in somebody's home. And you would not consider moving things around, as I said. The deeper element of that is as follows. At the point where you're actually experiencing, you're actually participating, so to speak, in this home. And certain things in the home you can use, certain things in the home you cannot. this is already after the home is hosting you, and after the home is being presented to you. And at this point, you realize, listen, there's a host, and you can't, you have to conform to the things the way they are. There is a deeper sense to that. And that is that to begin with, like we always give the motion of the host and the guest, that to begin with, you are not in the home, you are in the presence of the host. There is no home. There's nothing there. And maybe there is something there, it's because he is now presenting it to you in order to make it comfortable for you. But in essence, what you're relating to is not to the comfort, but you're relating it to the host, the one who's giving it to you. That is the reason you're there. That is the basic reality. His presence, it is his presence which is the keser for this entire experience. This is what gives it a crown. This is what gives it a true and overall meaning. All the other experiences are are periphery to that principle. Insignificant relative to that principle. It is this principle that ultimately trickles down through the mental process into das, into conscious awareness. And not conscious awareness in a conscious manner. In other words, oh, there is a host over here, I better watch out. The whole reality of this situation trickles down into this. Therefore, this das and the kesed are identical things.
They're identical but at different levels.
Identical but at different levels. So this is what we're explaining. They're identical, and yet there is a big difference. They are so identical that you cannot count both. If you count spheres, you either count kesed or you count das. But yet, there's a big difference. I will start inside from the third line. V'yodua it is known. This is now elaborating on the quote from the Yitzchayim that when Kesed is counted, then das is not counted. When the kesed is not counted, then the das is counted. So it is known The mash ein hakeser nimna. This which we say that the keser is not counted. What does it mean? The keser is not counted. The keser is a sphere, is a presence. But we're referring to bechu bechinas pnimius hakeser. This is the bechina of the pnimius hakeser. And as we said in our little presentation, that the pnimius hakeser is not even part of the sphere. This is part of the host. This is not even part of what's being presented. This is what Ayin. ושכוסו בייס חיים שער ממלא פרק ג' ויוז הדס נמנה. And then, if the keser is not nimna, which means you do not reference pnimis hakeser, then you can reference das. So das comes in the place of this pnimis hakeser. Haresha hadas hu k'moi pnimis hakeser. Therefore, from this little analysis, in the words of the Eitz Chaim, we see that the das is like pnimis hakeser. This is why that if keser is not counted, you count the das. But keser is not on the pnimis hakeser, and therefore das can be counted because das provides the pnimis hakeser. And yet still. So it would seem that das is actually interchangeable with pnimis hakeser, but yet still, pnimis hakeser eino nimna b'minyan hasfiras. Pnimis hakeser is not considered in the line of spheres. The hadas nimna, and the das is part of this spheres. We always point out this interesting, very telling principle that when you count, when we describe, let's say, the human being, we're saying that the highest koyach in the human, the highest presence of the human being is chokhmah. You start from chokhmah. Why don't you start from rotzen and noinik? We explain because rotzen and noinik is really part of the nefesh. It's not part of the structure of the human being. The human being is a structure. The head, the heart, and so forth, the whole structure. The rotzen and noinik are not part of the structure. They're all encompassing, they're everywhere equally. It's not part of the human structure. Be quiet. I'll try to redial. When you promised me, it's corrected.
Not working. Here we go.
This goes right through, right?
Yeah. That's so funny.
Welcome to the conference room. At the tone, please exit. You are now entering the conference room. To exit the conference room, press star star. For help, press star 9. You are participant number 2.
All right, we're back. So Pnimis, Akeser, and Das are representative of one another, or Das representative of Pnimis, Akeser. And yet, Pnimis, Akeser is part of the structure of Spheros. And Das is part of the structure of Spheros. And Keser is not part of the structure of Spheros. Because Das has a structural element, and Pnimis HaKeser does not. Then we'll say the parentheses, and tonight the Mitzvah Shem will have a chance to discuss it further. Klolos Aminyan, the Spheres, who the count of spheres when you are including Keser, then this count of the spheres who owes the Madrego Elieno Har Beyeser is then at a much higher Madrega than the normal count of spheres as a structural element. If you count Pnimis HaKeser, then you are referring to the spheres at a much higher level, on the pnimis of the spheres, not even on the structural level. We should also be mokimach. So we conclude this in Yukmaikein, who b'chinas pnimis abo, and the similar union is in that bechina, it's called Pnimis Abba, the Pnimis of Chochmah. Shehu k'moi Pnimis Atik. The Pnimis Abba, which is like the Pnimis of Atik. And the Komoko and Miyat still, Kasher Bo, the bechinas HaChochmah. When that comes into the Chochmah aspect, Yechoyrim L'Hagia Lozeh, then it is possible to reach to that. Whereas when it is Pnimis Atik, then it is totally Atik. Atik means it's removed, remote. You can't reach that. You can't reach that by effort, by intellect and so forth. And now we are going to interrupt. This evening in Mitzvah Shem, we're going to get together again. All right. The official time is 8:30, and the address is 679 Crown Street. Okay. All the best.
Na 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 na